This is Gwen Talks Radio, where intimate conversations reveal, heal, inspire, and entertain. And now, here's your host, Tess Cacciatore.
Okay, here we go. You're listening to Gwen Talks Radio, and I'm your host, Tess Cacciatore. So today, December 20th, what an amazing holiday season. I'm not sure about you all. If you've listened to previous shows, we've encouraged you to meditate, breathe, don't get caught up in the stresses, really enjoy the season, enjoy the holidays. You have a few more days. I know people are bustling around finding out their presents for Christmas Eve. There's many things to celebrate in the spiritual season every day, but this happens to be the last night of Hannukah, so I want to send a big shout out to all my Jewish beautiful friends. I hope your Hannukah season has been filled with many blessings for your family, and looking forward to the Christmas celebration. And of course, we can't do this mashup without saying Kwanzaa coming up on December 26th to January 1st. So I want to give a shout out and much love to all my Kwanzaa celebrating friends around the world. So this is a show that we're calling The Immaculate Perception. And it's coming from a title in my book, which I've only given little hints along the way of these last 11 episodes. But today I'm going to dive in a little deeper about my journey and the last part. I have a book coming out in the spring, Homeless to the White House. It's divided into 3 parts. The last part, I always giggle when I say this, but it's Gwen is Born, the Immaculate Perception. And Gwen, of course, is Global Women's Empowerment Network. It's the basis of all that I'm doing. And I really feel like since I wasn't a mother giving natural childbirth, I've had the blessing to be a mother for many, many children around the world. And Gwen is kind of like my baby. So being raised in the Catholic religion and the Catholic faith and the Christian faith, the Immaculate Conception and all the stories that came from the Bible with the birth of Christ, which is coming up on December 25th, of course, I thought the tongue-in-cheek of the Immaculate Perception would be part of my book, because what is the conception to perception? How do we perceive our lives? And how can we open up to the blessings that we can receive every day? So I had an interesting situation that happened. I got invited through LinkedIn from this wonderful young gal by the name of Nadia. And she sent me this invitation around early November. And she said, hey, there's this wonderful organization called Women Like Us, and I'd love for you to meet Linda Rundelman, who's the founder, because you two have a lot in common. And I said, wow, I like that name, Women Like Us. That makes me feel like there's collaboration in store. So Linda and I got on the phone. We had over an hour conversation of sharing our vision and our passion and how we love bringing women together and men as well. And our missions joined forces in certain paths, but the sex trafficking one was really prevalent in what we both believe in trying to eradicate, and our passion to be able to work in that arena. So she invited me to her fundraiser. And I went with David Longoria and his son, Lucas. And when I got there, I thought that I had met like a tribe of new sisters that I hadn't met before. And I got to meet Eden Albert, which she and I have been friends on Facebook for about 8 years. And Eden happens to be the daughter of Herb Albert, who I'm a huge fan of course. And they have a restaurant called Vibrato, which is a jazz club up in Mulholland. And she invited me to this toy drive that was for Planet Hope. So I brought my bag full of stuffed animals for the kids. And I went up there, and at the bar was this wonderful woman who I had met at the fundraiser by the name of Terry Kaiser. And she invited me to sit down. And I'm telling you this story because it ended up giving me the most serendipitous, divine, fast track blessing, because that night she invited me to come out to dinner with her girlfriends. And so often as of late, I've been really much a hermit. I've wanted to stay in my cave. And most of the time when people invite me out, I say, no, I'm going to stay in and write, or I'm going to stay in and work. And this particular night I said, yes, I'm going to go to dinner with these ladies. And in the middle of the dinner, Terry announced that she was going to go down to Mexico to her home and be able to do some upkeep on this beautiful home. Didn't say where it was, but she said it was in Mexico. Who wants to go? And I instantly said, I want to go. I was going to be a big yes. Didn't know how I was going to manifest it. Didn't know how I was going to, get time off of this busy season and all that. But with my big resounding yes, I found myself at Terry's house just a few days ago. And I have to say that it was such a blessing, because I've been struggling with how to end my book, because it just feels like there's a continuous story that can keep going on. But when I landed there and I found out that we were at the Sea of Cortez, all of the angels and muses surrounded me and it downloaded. So within the 5 days that I was there, I wrote the last chapter of my book. And I'm sharing this with you because the last section is called the Immaculate Perception. Here we are entering into the Christmas season. And I have such a treat for you with two amazing women in my life that are going to dive in and talk about the intimacies of the perception of conception and the perception of motherhood, and how we all can be mothers no matter if we have children or not. And we are going to dive deep into talking about the birth of Christ consciousness and how we can build ourselves in humanity and how we can come together as one. So I'm going to take a quick break, and I'm going to bring in Robbie Firestone, who's an American fine artist. She started Spirit Capture Portraits, which she's an art teacher and all kinds of wonderful things. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to bring Robbie back on, and we're going to talk about the whole conception of birth. So hang on to your seats, and we'll be right back.
Check out the theme song from the feature film Bloodline, Now or Never, by David Longoria featuring April Diamond. The title song, Now or Never, is available on iTunes, Amazon, and other major music streaming outlets. By buying Now or Never, you will be supporting the campaign to help end the poaching of rhinos in Africa.
Welcome back to Gwen Talks Radio, and this is your host, Tess Cacciatore. I'm going to take this time to thank our advertisers and sponsors and invite you, if you have a like-minded business, a book, or an event to promote, would love to hear from you, and come on board to the Gwen family, and we can be able to promote our things together. So without further ado, I'm so excited to bring on Robbie Firestone. I met her through my dear Betsy Chassie. We're going to talk about this amazing documentary that they did together called The Empty Womb. How special of a title is that? We have so many things that we're going to talk about because we're planning on doing an event in New York at the UN in spring. I'm just going to bring you on, Robbie, because I could talk forever about your introduction. Are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm right here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
Perfect.
Yeah, so our listeners already know that we talk with people from all over the world. So we're not in one place. And that's what makes this show so special to me, is because I can tap into any part of the world. And where are you at right now? You live in New Mexico.
I do. I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, but I am sitting on the edge of the world, the Puget Sound, in Seattle at a dear friend's beautiful guest house, and watching the misty rain and the perfect clouds go at exactly the pace of the sea as it pulls out the tide. It's stunning.
Oh, I love that. And just a few days ago, I was sitting on the opposite end of the water edge of the Sea of Cortez. So that whole water element fits in nicely with the whole birthing conversation that we're going to have today.
It does.
So I met you through Betsy, and then I had the divine pleasure of you coming to LA and spending the day with me. And we had such a great time. I wish that you could have stayed for weeks and weeks, because I know we just were tipping the iceberg when you had to leave that day. So tell me, how did you meet Betsy? And let's talk about the empty womb, and we can back into your other fine art thing. But the whole empty womb concept and project, when I heard about it through Betsy, just warmed my heart. And I want to find out what your story is about that.
Well, how I met Betsy was actually an incredible Moment of synchronicity. I mean, it's kind of one of those moments where I couldn't plan to have met Betsy. When I first saw What the Bleep Do We Know, which she wrote, produced, directed, it changed my life because I realized there was a tribe out there who thought like I did. And
Yes.
also growing up very Catholic, I didn't realize that I wasn't crazy when I thought about things the way that Betsy portrayed them in the film. So at that moment, I actually created a commitment in my mind that someday I would work with Betsy Chassie. I just thought she was a genius. And as time moved on and my career moved on, there were little overlaps where I thought I would meet her. And the strangest thing occurred, the way that I actually met her. I could never have planned. I was I think it was Chicago Airport, 4 hours delayed for a flight. And I heard this little voice in my head as I looked through this immense crowd at my airplane gate. And the voice said, "Go talk to that guy." There was no way to sit and talk to that guy. It was so crowded. And the voice came 3 times. I ended up saying, "All right, fine." I walked by him and nothing happened. And then suddenly the woman sitting next to him stood up and left. Well, it turns out that sitting by him, I said, "So who the hell are you?" And he looked and said, "Who the hell are you?" And
You
began,
said that to him, "Who the hell are you?" I love that.
yeah, because I just was
Usually
like,
people say hi. You just strike up a conversation. Who the hell are you?
Well, I said I initiated, "Who the hell are you?" Because I was told to go talk to him from my inner voice, right?
Yes.
And so basically, he was the one who introduced me to Betsy. They were close personal friends. He worked on What the Bleep Do We Know, his first job out of college. And one day he waltzed her into my studio in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and said, "Robbie, I need you to meet someone." And there she was. And Betsy and I fell instantly in love. I just had the most immense respect for her and hope to work on tons of projects with that woman.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that. Well, it's so serendipity. You're telling me this story about serendipity because the opening, I was kind of called to talk about how I ended up at the Sea of Cortez by this string of meeting these women, just in the month of November. And here we are a few short weeks later. So what happened when you met Betsy in your studio?
Well, Betsy,
I'm so jealous she's been able to see your work in person. I can't wait.
Yeah, I was kind of flabbergasted that Betsy Chassie was standing in my studio, and she looked around. She turned and looked at me and said, "You are perfect. You're exactly who I want to work on my next project with." And of course, then the God thing happened where I was like, "Holy crap!" In 2004, I committed that and I just said, "Yes, I don't care what it is. Yes," and so. She was working on financing for that particular project, which fell through as infinite numbers of projects in Hollywood do. And we had a meeting in LA and sat down together. And she said, I'm really disappointed, but I have to tell you, this project that I was going to use you as an artist for, because she uses a lot of visual graphic type elements. She said, "It's fallen through. We lost the financing." And I said, "It's okay. Now I know you. I'm grateful. We'll work together. I just know divinity is at hand." Right. So as that lunch moved on, she said, "Tell me what you're working on." I told her about the empty womb, and she gasped as she kind of did jazz hands in this exclamation and went, "Oh my gosh, you're my next project." And so I
love that.
So it was completely her conception, quote unquote, her idea, her passion that then drove the project forward. And now we have this exquisite documentary that serves women who are in the moment of struggle of infertility and in vitro fertilization and have the feeling of angers and jealousies and all the nightmares that ensue when one goes through infertility and the isolation of it.
So I love that you said the word conception because it's every day we get to find ways to give birth to projects and new ideas and new ways of being and all of that. And the idea of infertility is such a stressful topic and such a taboo topic. How do you walk around that? And what's your personal story in that arena?
Well, how I walk around in it now is very different than when I was going through it. I was very jealous, very filled with rage, very just extraordinarily distraught. And I consider myself a pretty emotionally intelligent creature, but there were emotions that welled up inside of me that were so profound and foreign and alien and quote unquote negative that I just had no way of dealing with and no resources to help me deal with them. And that was how I was then. How I am now, it's 7 years later, and my passion, my mission has been born from this art project that I created dealing with that infertility to heal myself. And now I not only talk about it, I am a warrior for other women who are moving through it, because I remember how profoundly isolating and painful it was. And I want them to have someone to turn to.
I'm so glad that you're this beacon of light on that path for the women that are going through that painful experience.
Thank
you. You've been through the other side of it 7 years ago. Did that mean like 7 years ago you decided, okay, I'm just going to be fine with...
No.
Tell me that process, because there's so much that I'm sure you went through.
Well, honestly, Tess, I didn't think I was going to be fine. I truly, my mother died when I was 3 years old, and I have wanted to be a biological mother since then, because I wanted to be able to smell my own child. I wanted to be able to look into the eyes of this baby that would come from my body and see my mother's eyes. You know, there was a profound primal need in my soul, in my existence, in my body, that yearned for a motherhood and a child and this little being that I believe soul would choose me. And so it was a crisis physically where, you know, there are hundreds of, if not thousands of females before me that created this entity that I am, this body, this being. And yet I am the end of the lineage. I am the biological failure. Then as a spiritual being, I thought, well, how come a soul didn't choose me? On a psychological traumatic level, trauma, I thought, how in the world could women who abuse and neglect their children every day be gifted a soul to care for and not me? So there were just
that's a huge one for those of us who haven't had children. When you look around to see, you know, the people that have abused their children, which perpetuates the cycles of abuse, which is why we're trying to bring out these kind of topics to be able to heal from that. So, and then people, keep going.
Well, and people then immediately, before even allowing me to grieve, say, have you ever thought about adoption? And I literally wanted to smack him in the face and go, no, I'm a freaking 43-year-old woman. What's the word adoption? What could that be? Possibly. I have no idea what you're talking about. And they want to fix it immediately and shove a baby at you or a child, rather than letting me grieve. And thereafter, I'm a huge, huge supporter of adoption. Both my parents were adopted. My brother, who is my beloved brother, was adopted. And
my mom was adopted as well.
Yeah, we had talked about that. And it's a big part of my life. And adoption is not easy. It's expensive for most. It is very difficult to achieve. I filled out 70 pages of papers and FBI and to adopt, and rightly so. However, it's not just a quick fix. Oh, go get a baby. So it's been an extraordinary journey, and I feel like this art project that I've created, or that's come through me, I have to say, is something that I have a hard time saying that I've given birth to, because I truly believe there is nothing like being a mother. And I don't think that is a journey that will come to me in this lifetime now, which is very sad, but I think I've finally accepted. So I can't say I've birthed this project. It still feels gross to me to say that for myself. But it's mine, and to shepherd and to support other women.
Absolutely. Well, it's an interesting concept because that's how I've been able to resolve my own situation, is to be able to give birth to the creativity, which to me is giving some healing to the world. So, one of the things that you brought up, which is really interesting, is the financial aspects of the adoption and the things you have to go through. I have several friends that have successfully adopted and those who have not had that chance to. And I've also had friends that have spent their entire life savings on in vitro and then the adoption process. Yeah. How does one go through that? I have not gone through either. So how does one go through when you might not have the resources to be able to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and the stress that it must relay into the relationship itself?
Well, you don't go through it if you don't have the money. It's just as simple as that. And I was fortunate that I do. And I'm very aware that I was fortunate that I do, and I did. Other people just don't have the opportunity, and they perhaps, I can't speak for others, honestly. I have no idea.
Well, I was just trying to figure out if there's ways to give tips. I don't know if there's any kind of foundations that help for that. If there's, various ways to go through the adoption process. I know foster care is also another way to go for people that, have that home. Yes. To be able to provide for that. What about, we're going to bring on Marianne in a few minutes, but I wanted just to tap into the stresses of a relationship that happen within a partnership, whether it's same-sex partnership or husband and wife or people that are living together that are in partnership. What kind of stresses, what do you recommend to those couples out there that are going through this, or even single people? What do you recommend for them to go through emotionally so they stay present to the relationship and try to work through whatever stresses that come up through that?
It's interesting that you bring this up because I have found when I went through it, there were no resources for exactly this. So I've actually begun, and I'm creating right now, an addition to my business that is, I call it the Empty Womb Coaching. And it's essentially a 12-week program that's one-on-one with me to move through the process of, I say, rest, resolve, and recreate your life after IVF and infertility. And I don't say that as a plug. It's just that I found absolutely no one who could help me. My counselor that had known me for 8 years when I started the hormone treatment wanted to institutionalize me because the drugs that I was taking, if you think of the quantity of a shot glass, it's almost like I'm injecting a vial of that amount of hormones into my body every day. And thereby it changed me physiologically and biologically, the pain, the physical pain, the emotional trauma. Like I said, I'm a licensed RSCP through Holmes Institute, and I was unable to gather up my own thoughts. I was angry. I was rageful. I literally, luckily again, had the resources to say to my former husband, you need to get a condo next door because I need to be alone because I wanted to kill him, and it's a very traumatic experience. Some people mortgage their homes, take out a second mortgage, give up their life savings, like you said. So the financial trauma, the physical trauma of the pain in the body, and the part-time job of planning these medications to the hour. Often women who are C-suite, C-level, CEOs, CFOs are doing this because they've created their later careers and realize they're infertile or less fertile and need to do IVF. And they're running companies with upper management dealing with them and employees and husbands and creating entire cultures that they're driving, and they have no resources to help themselves. They're supposed to be the ones to fix it, and here they have no one to help them. So it's really my mission to create a scalable business that creates webinars and coaching resources at all income levels to support women going through infertility, to find catharsis, community, and resources for their real-time problems in that moment.
I love that. I know we talked a little bit about that before, and you know that I'm here to support that, and the Gwen platform is here to be able to get you out to any kind of audience in our community that can benefit from this, because it's so important. And that brings me to our first charity spotlight for the day, which is the Empty Womb Foundation, which we are in the process of putting under the fiscal sponsorship of Global Women's Empowerment Network. And then once everything goes into the space of Robbie having your own 501c3, which I've done this for 25 years now, is really helping to give birth to nonprofit organizations, because some people just want to do it for a project, and then they're just say, okay, I did it, that's good. And others want to get their own 501c3 and all that. So I really love that process, and I'm really honored to be able to shine a spotlight on the Empty Womb Foundation that's going to be giving birth soon as well. So let's take a quick break, and right after we get back, I'm going to introduce you to the most amazing woman. I've been talking about her to you and you to her, so it's going to be a most amazing, powerful thing. So to my listeners, we'll be right back.
The Life Changes Show is a premier radio show presented by the Life Changes Network, which is a company whose team has dedicated their lives not only to positive change, but to helping others observe and embrace, honor, and even celebrate their own changes, thus enabling a more positive, inspired life and helping to create a more positive and inspired world. From everyday people, celebrities, corporate giants, and children, we are here to help and to serve. With heart, integrity, and experience, we bring our message and positive intent into your lives through the Life Changes Show, lifechangesnetwork.com, and through guest appearances on other inspiring shows and events. If you wish to learn more about Life Changes Life Coaching, a private consultation with one of us, corporate or live event appearances, or if you would like us to appear on your radio or TV shows, please email us at info@lifechangesnetwork.com.
All right, welcome back to Gwen Talks Radio. This is your host, Tess Cacciatore. I have Robbie Firestone, which you've just heard, the most amazing story of her journey. And I've been talking to both of these women about each other because there's so many similar attributes of strength and conviction and vulnerability and commitment to this topic. So I met Ann Esmieu through David Longoria when we were doing the We Are One project, when he has over 700 artists, which you've heard me talk about on this show, on this one song called We Are One. And we got introduced to Charity and Howard McQuarrie. And when I met Howard and Charity, they brought Mary Ann. And when I met the three of them, I was off the roof, just excited to be in all of their presence, just grounded, open-hearted, special beings. And so the second spotlight for Charity today is McQuarrie Foundation. So McQuarrieFoundation.org, McCrary Foundation.org. They have a Christmas album, and this 'tis the season. Amazing musical family. You've heard of them, I'm sure, throughout the ages. They have multiple decades in their past, and they have probably 30 plus people in their family choir. So I'm so excited to bring Mary Ann onto the show. She is a doctorate in psychology, a master in education, and has been in executive management in the nonprofit arena for the last 20 plus years, which I'm really excited about knowing more about that side too, because nonprofit arena needs executive management of this caliber. So Mary Ann, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So I can't wait for us to dive in, for Robbie and you to compare notes and dive into this arena, which is so special. But I want to hear your story. I heard a little bit about it when I first met you, and then we got to dive a lot deeper recently, and I got to meet your beautiful son. So tell us your story, because I know you said that when you were listening to Robbie, it was very similar to your story.
It is very similar, especially in terms of the fact that, like you said, I've been in executive management for 20 years. I come from a family. I'm the youngest of 13.
Wow.
Yeah. So, when I decided, to, do what most women do nowadays, and that's decide to have a career and then a family, I just assumed that I would automatically, just be able to conceive and have a child, but that wasn't the case. And I felt dejected and rejected, and I felt like a complete failure of a woman. I thought, here I am, this person who can, manage, 2,500 people and create new programs and, do, all of these things that I was being awarded for. But at the end of the day, I couldn't do that basic thing that every woman wants to do. And that's to, have a child. When Robbie spoke about, wanting to, have a baby that you could smell and just touch and, look in that little face and, see your eyes or see your smile, it brought back so many memories. Even thinking about it now, I'm getting emotional about it. But, I have the same struggle. My ex-husband and I, we tried to conceive for 9 years. And at just kind of the last moment, we decided that we would do one trial of IVF. And we did that one trial, and we were able to conceive a boy and a girl. So I was extremely happy. But like Robbie said, taking all these medications, hormones were raging. I turned into a completely different person. And in the midst of all of those hormones, all of the behavior changes, all of the angst of, I'd really have to have this baby. I've been holding on to this for so long. I've been, having to, if I had to go grocery shopping, I could not walk down the aisle where there was a pregnant woman. I stopped going to baby showers because the pain was just so deep. So I was carrying this baby with all of this fear. And in the midst of all that, my husband, who was in the Army at the time, got reassigned to go to Chicago. And so we had to move within a month. The stress of all that ended up sending me to the hospital. I lost the girl. I was around 3 months. I lost my daughter. Her name is Madison. But I lost her, and they basically sent me home saying, oh, well, it's an IVF pregnancy. They basically told me to go home and just wait until I had a miscarriage. They said it was a threatened miscarriage, and they basically said, oh, you'll see some gray tissue. And once you see the gray tissue, you'll know that it's time to come back to the hospital so that we can do a DNC. And it was kind of like, oh, well, that happens. I was devastated. I was afraid. I had to move. I didn't know what to do. There was absolutely no one that I could turn to in my family, no one in the community. It's one of those things that women just don't talk about. And I was afraid, but I took the move in grace and ease, as much grace and ease as I could. We moved to Chicago. And while we were there, I saw specialist after specialist, all of whom told me the same thing, that I needed to go ahead and have a DNC or I needed to have an abortion. And I would bleed to death if I did not have an abortion or decide not to have my son. Because I had a subchorionic hemorrhage, which means that I was on bed rest. I bled throughout the entire pregnancy. They gave me up to 32 weeks to have a baby. And at that time, I decided, you know what? I've lived 38 years. I'm going to have this baby, if that's the last thing that I do. I was completely in love with my son from the moment that I knew that he decided to come to me. I do believe that kids choose their parents. But I get emotional when I start talking about this.
It's okay. So, we're in a safe place because you're inspiring so many women. But it was around 6 months because I had up to 32 weeks to abort. I decided to send my husband at the time to parenting class and to infant CPR class. And I started stocking the nursery for 6 months because I didn't want him to have to buy diapers or formula
or any type of toiletries. I just completely stocked the nursery, made sure that my son had everything that he would need, toys, books, all types of stuff. And at 28 weeks, I decided to go home to Mississippi to see my family, basically to tell them, you know, that I would be expiring once my son was born, and that I needed them to help my husband at the time to, you know, care for Mason, for my son. And so I went down there to say my goodbyes. And while I was down there, you know, saying my goodbyes to friends and family, everyone started speaking about this doctor who had just come from New Orleans and was just fantastic. And, you know, there was all this praise, and I was like, you know, I'll go see her. So at 29 weeks, I decided to make an appointment, and I was lucky enough to get in to go see her. And she was the first doctor out of the 5 specialists that I saw who said, if you want to have this baby, I'll make sure that you have this baby. We talked about what would happen once I expired, what the exchange would be, how the family could be there. And we planned everything out. So I was completely at peace. I was like, even if, you know, if it's God's will that the last thing I do is to give birth to this little boy, I'm happy. I'm content. I'm at peace, because he deserves to be here. And at the end of that conversation, she said, "Oh, but next week I won't be here. I'm going on vacation. So you'll see my nurse practitioner." So the next week I went in to see her, the nurse practitioner, and we did all the measurements and all of that stuff. And at the time she was like, "Okay, you're good to go." But I noticed that the measurements hadn't changed since the last week. And I didn't want to be, you know, that patient, because I was so new, but I was so used to being that patient that kind of checked the doctors to make sure that they knew what they were doing. So I was like, you need to run those numbers again, because it doesn't look like, you know, he's grown or anything like that. And she's like, "Oh, okay." And she ran the numbers again. And then she came back and she's like, "Well, let me check his amniotic fluid index." And for women who don't know, who are still going through the process, the amniotic fluid is supposed to be at between 8 to 10. When they checked mine, it was at 3, which meant that my son was in crisis. That it meant that basically he wasn't able to get enough oxygen. There was, you know, amniotic fluid also contains waste. I lost it. I went into complete hysterics. And they told me that they would have to take the baby immediately, and I would have to have an emergency C-section. Now, the glory in all of this is that I was in a small town in rural Mississippi at a hospital that had never delivered a baby that was conceived via IVF. And so they had to call around. They called around to 4 different states to find one hospital who would take me, who would take the risk of delivering my son. They found one hospital, and I was airlifted there. Once I got there, I was immediately taken into the operation room, and I was completely fine. I'd meditated and prayed throughout my entire pregnancy. But once I got in that operating room and I saw that there were like 20 people there, and they were all pretending to be so at ease, I knew that I was like, oh my goodness, this is really serious. But they gave me the epidural. My son was out in 5 minutes, and the first thing that I asked was about his APGAR scores, and he had really high APGAR scores, and I was like, oh, you know, thank you, Jesus. I was so happy. And in the midst of, you know, praising God and thanking him for my son, I heard a scalpel drop. And it seemed like panic just went throughout the entire operation room. I heard people asking for more blood, saying that she's going to need more blood. She being me, of course. The residents who were working on me, who were so calm at first, seemed panicked. They took my son away, And I felt myself like losing consciousness, like fighting to stay awake. And I just started thanking God for my son's life, asking God to protect him all the days of his life, thanking God for my journey. And in the midst of that prayer, the door opened and I heard a lady's voice, and she just casually said, "Has anyone found my keys?" And I'm going to try to get through this without crying. And she said it again because no one paid her any attention. It was like a lot of scrambling. They were trying to get more blood. And she said, "Did you guys hear me?" And no one said anything. And she said, "Wait a minute, did you guys have this?" And one of the residents said, "No, she's bleeding everywhere. We can't even tell where she's hemorrhaging from." And she said, the lady said, "Oh my God." She was like, now I can't go home. She's like, the last thing that I want to do is go home and find out that a mother died on the operating table because you guys didn't know what to do. And she asked them to get her a step ladder. And she just casually came over there to me and said, "You're going to feel a little pulling and you're going to feel a little nauseous." And for the next 4 hours, she operated on me. And when I woke up, I was a mom. Now, the best thing about that story is that the person who just happened to come into that room while I was praying was the chief of surgeons.
Wow.
The only person in 4 states who could have saved my life.
Mm.
So, and I woke up and I was able to look at my son, who I had waited 9 years to meet. I can't even tell you the amount of love and how grateful I was just to be a mom, and how every day that I wake up and I look into his eyes and I see my own soul looking back at me. That's why, times like this, Christmas, when we talk about the Immaculate Conception,
Mm-hmm.
it brings everything full circle, because I know that miracles exist because I have one. Who's 3 years old now and healthy and happy, and who is, the joy of my life. So, for those women who are listening to this, there is another side of IVF. There is another side of infertility, and it's motherhood, whether that is, you being able to conceive a child on your own, you adopting, you becoming a foster parent, or you being a great aunt. The children that we have in our lives are God's gifts. So it's, I'm going to cry, but
I think we all are already.
Wow. That every day is a miracle. Every day is a blessing. And, I know that my story is a little, it's different, but I know that it's not unique. I know that there are other women who have had those God moments in that operating room when they were trying to conceive, when they were trying to give birth, rather. And it's, I'm just happy to be able to share it. And thank you, Tess, for allowing me to share my story and to share the story of Mason.
Well, I had the extreme pleasure on Thanksgiving of all days of gratitude, which is every day, but on Thanksgiving, you and I looked at each other and I was like, I know this person. And you looked at me like, I know this person, because it was such out of sorts. And, when you see people in certain circles, and then all of a sudden I got invited at the last minute, talk about divine serendipity, to Dr. Sarah Larson's friends for Thanksgiving. And I brought my friend Shelley and her son Trayvon. And I just saw this beautiful woman that I recognized with this beautiful boy in her arms. And I was like, oh my God, it's you. And I didn't know that, that whole deep story, and wow, prayers answered, God, that woman, has anybody seen my keys? I mean, how random that she would walk into the operating room. She could have walked anywhere around the hospital. And for her to come in at that time of prayer answering is so powerful. Robbie, I know you're there, and I'm holding you in both of you so tightly right now. This is a very powerful day for for us all. What stories, Ay. So, Robbie, do you want to say anything? I know that.
It's so interesting. Marianne, thank you so much for sharing your story. And
thank you for listening.
I'm so happy for you and for your boy and for your family and the world that you brought forth this child. And, you said, Tess, when I asked you what you wanted this show to be, you said an intimate conversation. And and Marianne, just what you've shared is so profound. And and it's amazing to me that 7 years ago was my experience, and I've really made peace with my non-motherhood, and yet I just am observing and witnessing my own feelings of jealousy and why her, and the feelings that just probably will never go away. And yet I also have such happiness and gratitude for you, and the honesty within myself of witnessing my own experiences. Why, God, did she get it? You know what I mean? And
that's powerful.
It's so interesting because we don't know. I am a spiritual practitioner through agape and through science of mind. And I just always have to fall back on this idea that there are these 4 levels of spirituality. And one is when you deny that any life / God / universe / whatever you want to call a higher state of being, entity, whatever exists, there's that. And then there's I work with God, but I sort of control my fate. And then, the final piece for me was just realizing Mother Nature kicked my ass and she's stronger, and that I work with that which is my God. But bottom line is nature and life has its way with me. And I will probably always feel the loss and the jealousy and the sadness and the joy and gratitude and happiness for you, and the joy and gratitude and happiness that for whatever reason this project that I'm doing has come through me because I couldn't be a biological mother. And so my hope is to serve, as many women as I possibly can who share an experience of loss. And my darling, I'm so sorry that you lost your girl. I mean, Madison, right? It was her. Madison.
Yeah. Madison.
I mean, you had all of it. You lost your baby girl. You have your beautiful boy, and you have all of it. And I just thank you for sharing your story. And I want to meet you in person and hug you and love on you.
Let's make it happen. But thank you for being so honest, and for I know that for me, when I was going through the process, we tried for 9 years, and I just felt like a shut-in. I felt, it was kind of like I attend agape as well. I was stuck in victim consciousness. Like, why me? Why is God, forsaken me? I have sisters who have 7 children. Yes. I have, great nieces and nephews, who are, who have, 5 and 6. I have 50 nieces and nephews. I was like, I come from a family of just abundance in terms of fertility. Why am I getting the short end of the stick? What did I do? Yeah. I did everything right. I went to school. Yes. I got the fancy degrees and the fancy credentials. I made the right connections. Why am I, being shut off from this basic experience? Yeah. And and although, I have my son, I do have the desire to have more children, whether that's through fostering or adoption or, me trying IVF again, I don't know. But in the meantime, I'm glad that there's organizations like yours, Robbie, because I didn't have that. I didn't have anyone who was shining a light on infertility in a way that wasn't shameful, in a way that said, well, you can do all this and you can do that, but what's wrong with you that you can't have children? That's kind of like, that's the way that people kind of approach it. It's one of those things that is just taken for granted. Yeah. And I certainly, working in the nonprofit arena, I had those experiences of looking at women who had 5 and 6 children who were maybe in the system for, abuse or, drug and alcohol related incidents. And I thought, why them? Yeah. Why not me? And I found myself in that just complete grief of motherhood. And the only way that I know to turn it around now is to celebrate other women. Yes. So I'm happy that all of us are talking about it and shining a light on it in a way that allows other people to really be honest with their emotions regarding motherhood and infertility and that idea of what conception means, because there's all types of religious blockages that I had to go through because I'm an old Southern Baptist at heart. Yeah. But, really getting into terms with just being at peace with the way that my body is made, the way that God made me, the way that my son came, decided to come here through me. I get it on so many levels, just biologically, spiritually, physically, the all the angst of IVF and the injections and the doctor's appointments. I get it on so many levels, and I'm so glad, Robbie, that you're doing that work because it's been needed for years and years and years. So thank you.
Well, absolutely, and thank you, Robbie, for the honesty of your feeling of jealousy, because that's something that I believe, will eventually be able to heal because of opening up the foundation and being able to support women on a daily basis that are going through that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I have no idea. I don't know if I'll ever be over, the jealousy. And, I'd love to say, oh, yeah, I'll fix it. And, yeah, it'll go away. And, the bottom line is we all have human experiences that we can't fix. And we may always feel, someone may be bummed out that they can't be, I don't know, just any grass is greener situation, right? We all have those spaces in our life. And the thing that, I love that you said, Marian, that you turned it around by being able to celebrate other women, quote unquote. And for me, the way I was able to turn it around, I was given the book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, a Holocaust survivor. And I was suicidal at the time, literally 3 times a week, truly considering killing myself because it was so important to me to be a mother. And I felt so much an outsider of the most basic primal experiences we discussed. And my friend, this psychiatrist actually gave me this book, Man's Search for Meaning, as homework. And in that turning around, he, as a survivor, realized the only way he could survive and the only way people survived was if they had something to attach hope to. And that's where the project was born for me. I do celebrate other women and celebrate anyone who wants to be celebrated. Celebration is a huge part of my experience now as a person and as a personality. But the thing that really helps me transition through is knowing that I put all of my energy and all of my love into the Empty Womb Project, into the art, into the film, into the mission of providing catharsis and resources and community to women undergoing IVF and life after infertility. And it's just the only thing that works for me. And I'm grateful that I found that.
Well, I'm so grateful to both of you to be able to share both of your stories, which are both so powerful. I'm so grateful to you both. We have to come to the end of our time together, at least in this juncture. So I just wanted to circle back around and just do the charity spotlights again. We're gonna be putting up on the Global Women's Empowerment Network.org. We'll have some information on the Empty Womb Project to begin the Empty Womb Foundation to help Robbie support that concept and bring it into full fruition, because it's a very much needed project and community outreach to be able to help other women and couples that are going through this process.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And the other charity is the McQuarrie Foundation, McQuarrieFoundation.org. And go download their Christmas album just in time to have your family together, knowing the blessings of everyone together during this holiday season, with people that are going through so much right now in the world, that we send a lot of prayers and love out from the Gwen family to all of you. And when we come back from this break, I have I can't call her my little Lizzie Sider anymore, because she's becoming such a beautiful grown woman. I met her when she was 12 or 13. And I'm so excited because she sent me her newest release last week. And it's a beautiful rendition that is so appropriate for today's show. We're going to listen to Lizzie Sider's Silent Night. And then we're going to go right into Minor for Matter Minute to remind you to take at least a minute a day, but if you could do a minute an hour and be in meditation and in celebration, in gratitude, in grounding yourself in this crazy world that we're living in. Just a little reminder of the Mind Over Matter Minute. And I'll be right back after that break to say goodbye to you all. And in the meantime, thank you again to Robbie and Mary Ann. I just adore both of you women and cherish everything that you've shared today.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. So hold on and we'll be right back.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, shepherds quake at the sight, glory stream from heaven afar, heavenly hosts sing Alleluia. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born. Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, radiant beams from thy holy face, with the dawn of redeeming grace. Jesus, Lord, have
Now, a Mind Over Matter Minute.
Lizzie Sider, I Love You So, and that rendition of Silent Night is absolutely stunning, as are you. I want to take this time to thank Robbie Firestone and Ann Esmieu, who came on today to show the very raw and vulnerable stories that they carry with them. And I'm just giving you both a very big hug and gratitude. Every day I get to wake up feeling blessed that I have the gift of Gwen to feel like I'm doing something in the world that pales in comparison of the parents that are out there. The women and men that are gone through the suffering of infertility and the stories that were shared today by Robbie and Marianne. My heart goes out to them, but I also want to honor their courage and bravery to come forward and share their stories, as dramatic and raw and vulnerable and real that they were with each other and with me. I'm truly grateful. I hope that this episode helps you in some way to calm you if you're going through infertility problems. If you're someone like me and just has felt that children were not in my cards, but I thank God did not go through the huge depression that some women go through, because I feel like I'm doing my life purpose. And I hope that those of you that are going through the same situation as I, that you find peace within your heart and have compassion for one another. And through this holiday spirit and season, the coming to the close of Hannukah today, I truly admire all the religions and faiths and walks of life and respect everyone's faith and how they walk through life with integrity and grace. And I personally am looking forward to celebrating my own faith and celebrating Christmas and sending out love to my family who's not in the same town as I am, and just sending out warm wishes and healthy holiday season and getting ready for a new year. We have one more episode before the end of the year. I'm really blessed to have Justin Baldoni from Jane the Virgin coming and talking about the Carnival of Love. And we have some very special guests from the Mayor's Office of Los Angeles talking about homelessness. So as we're going through this season, feel blessed that you have a home and that you have your health, and whatever adversities that you may be going through, just know that I'm praying for you as well. And remember, the world is much better with you in it. And in the meantime, till next time, have a blessed day.
Thank you for listening. Visit us at gwen.live and join our Gwen community. Share what's on your mind.